For all things outdoors, listen to the father of two, the Jesus-loving TV show hosting hairy, true-blood American redneck, Ben Cole.
And listen to the outdoor filming, chef cooking, chocolate milk drinking, John Weismuller. And we are
Rooted Podcast. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Rooted Podcast here. Today we're going to talk about how we get ready for the Velvet Opener versus the regular season Archery Opener and the things that we like to do to prepare for each of those. But before we get into all that and we bear down on the details of what all we do to get ready, Ben got this new fancy piece of equipment. He is just sitting here dying. I see him over there. He's just ready. He's eager to tell everybody what's going on and what he's doing. So, Ben, the floor is yours, my friend. Tell the people what's going on.
Y'all, we have a new piece of equipment at the ranch from our good friends at PH Outdoors Grain Drill. That's what's up. It's their G5 series, and it is a no-till grain drill ready to rip. Right now we're planting soybeans, but man, I'm telling you what, this is an absolute game changer for the ranch and what we're trying to accomplish, because now we've gone from broadcasting seed and praying that the turkeys and birds don't eat it all up to having a solid solution that actually plants everything from clover to soybeans, corn, sunflowers, whatever. It covers all your bases, and it gets you in a very, very good place to where you don't have to rely on just a spreader anymore. You can actually plant it how it's supposed to be and have perfect soil to seed contact. It is phenomenal, man. I'm so excited. I hopped on that tractor yesterday and I started planting my beans, and we're halfway through one field and going back today to finish that field, and then we're going to segue into a couple others, get all the beans out, and then at the 1st of August, I'm going to start putting in all of the clovers and brassicas and the daikon radish and things of that nature. In fact, I may get real excited and go ahead and plant some daikons now and just try to get that done. But the beautiful thing about this, too, is you can actually put out the exact amount of seed per acre in pounds that you need, so you don't have to buy extra because you're planting it appropriately instead of having to put out 100 pounds per acre of soybeans for broadcast. So that way you have enough seed out there to actually grow. Now you're cutting that in half and putting about 50 to 51 pounds per acre, which is exactly what you need to do this correctly. And furthermore, you're planting it on a 7.5-inch row, which is ideal for soybeans, especially for where we are, because the deer, like you've seen before, they just went in and destroyed it when we planted them on 15-inch rows. So by taking that step and going to the 7.5-inch rows is total game changer. And, man, this machine is going to absolutely change the landscape of the ranch down there at Sinking Creek. It's going to be unbelievable. So look out, guys. Deer season is coming. And by the way, while we're talking about the ranch, we do have openings to book. We have velvet hunts. We have archery hunts in October. We have some rifle hunts in November. So reach out, get a hold of us. We'd love to have you out and hunt with us.
Oh, for sure. So let me ask you about the whole 7.5-inch rows, 15-inch rows. Can you deep dive into that a little bit? What's the purpose of going to 7.5? Just to get more seed in the ground, or does it grow better, or all the above?
Well, one thing to look at on 7.5-inch rows is your plants are closer together. So what that does is it eliminates your need to spray as much, because when those plants come up and they're closer, they're going to shade out all the weeds faster than on 15-inch rows. So you're cutting that gap almost, you're cutting it in half, so now you went from here to here. So those plants don't have to get as big to shade out the ground. And, you're making it to where, you have more plants so that the deer can't just walk down a row and just destroy the whole row. You actually have, several rows that are real close together. So it's a lot better for high browse pressure areas.
Gotcha. No, hey, that makes all the sense in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And now, so are you gonna? I guess what I'm wondering is there / what is the biggest difference between like just a regular seeder, versus a grain drill?
So a regular seeder, like a corn planter, for example, a corn planter is specifically made to be set up on 30 to 36-inch rows, right? And it depends on what grain head you're using to harvest the corn. Well, we don't harvest these crops at the ranch because they're for the wildlife. So I plant all the corn on 30-inch rows just because it makes the most sense for what we're doing. And my planter's already set up on 30-inch rows. And the difference is so a conventional planter has 2 units with 2 seed hoppers, and they have plates in them. So those plates spin and drop the seed through the holes in the plates. So you're putting your seed out like that. Now, you can put soybean plates in there and stuff like that, but you cannot plant your clovers, your brassicas, your radishes, wheat, all that stuff. It's just not set up for that, because for wheat, brassicas, clover, all that stuff to do really well, you need those tighter rows. You're not going to plant wheat on 30-inch rows or 15-inch rows. So that's where the difference comes. And so a grain drill has a big hopper on top, whereas the corn planter has 2 individual hoppers, right? And each tube has compaction wheels, which close the furrow. So you have discs that open the furrow. They run like this, and then the seed drops in that, and then the wheel on the back crimps it closed. So that way you have perfect seed to soil contact, and there's not any seed sitting on the surface for birds and other animals to consume. And the corn planter does the same thing, but it's designed for larger seed like corn, sunflowers, things of that nature. So that's your biggest difference, is you can't make the fine adjustments to do the small seed with your conventional corn planter as you can with the grain drill. Okay. And the guys at PH Outdoors have made it so simple. They have a chart. You can go in and you can look at the chart. For example, soybeans, you want it to be on gate number 2 and the slot be number 4. And what you do then is there's a tray in there that you turn upside down, and you crank the wheel 26 times, and you take that amount of seed and you put it into a little container or whatever on a little scale, and you take that number in ounces or pounds, whichever it is, and you plug it into their system, and that tells you exactly how many pounds per acre you are putting out, which means you are perfectly calibrated to exactly the pound per acre that you need to be, which is huge. And it's real simple, man. It's easy. They have made this thing phenomenal. It's all sealed. There's no grease ports or anything like that. The only thing you have to do is every now and then grease the chain a little bit, put some chain lube on it, which is pretty normal. But other than that, man, this thing is a solid piece of equipment. And I'm telling you right now, man, I am absolutely floored with the quality of this drill from PH Outdoors. It's phenomenal, man. And not to mention, the folks at the actual company are awesome. I mean, they are God-fearing men, and they are doing it right, and they're making a product that actually fits well into the outdoor industry, what we're trying to do. So, man, it's just one of those things that it's a perfect fit for us. And, it's to where I can actually move it too. So, I can hook it to my tractor and put the tractor and the drill on my trailer and haul it to wherever I need to. And I don't have to worry about it hanging off the sides of the trailer or whatever. It just absolutely works perfectly for all situations. And they even make a 3-foot drill too, a real small one, which is perfect. I mean, they make up to a 10-foot too, I believe. Yeah. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it just sounds like it's a total game changer to everything that you're doing and trying to accomplish there.
well, the biggest thing is with having this kind of grain drill that's set up for no-till is you go in, you spray, do your burn down, and that's it. You don't have to spend the diesel fuel uh, going in and turning the soil. None of that. You just go in and you plant, and that's that. It's done. Over 2 steps versus 3. You know, it really drastically cuts down what you're trying to do, and your soil will thank you for that at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So, you know, I still say that every few years it's good to turn just to break up compaction and things like that. But for the most part, man, this is going to cut my time in half too, because of the ability to just spray and plant instead of having to do the reverse of go out and till again and all that. It just makes so much more
Right.
sense, and it makes the operation streamlined to be able to go in and do this with this machine. So huge shout out to PH Outdoors. Thank you guys so much for working with us at Rooted Television, Rooted Podcast. Uh, awesome equipment and awesome people. And speaking of the ranch, John, you know, we've got hunting season coming up. The old Sinking Creek Ranch, we've got some
Mhm.
open dates. So if anybody wants to do a velvet hunt, an archery hunt, a rifle hunt, let us know. Send us a message, whatever. We're available. We have some openings and we'd love to have you. So with that, John, let's keep talking about what we got going on here.
Yeah, so I'm glad the grain drill's working out for you. And I'm glad you got all sorts of hooked up there and seems to be doing its thing. But let's kind of pivot here. Let's talk about velvet season. You kind of mentioned it there.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have some openings. I've seen some velvet deer come off that place. Um, what what do you see as the biggest difference for getting ready for a velvet hunt versus opening day of archery? Because it's very different. And a lot of people may be like, well, it's just deer hunting, and I mean, of course, obviously it is, but in the same breath, you know, August, whatever it is, 15th or 20th, is way different than September 30th.
Huge difference than from velvet season to opening of bow season. So what we're doing right now is we're planning all these food plots to be ready. But one thing you need to notice is these deer are on their summer patterns. So the velvet hunt is really based solely around what they're doing in the summer. Now, granted, you know, I've got cameras all over that property, wise eyes everywhere. And let me tell you something,
Mm-hmm.
man. I have noticed that 95% of our deer right now are in the bottom where the water is, where the food is, and they are not as active at the top of the mountain right now. And that's one of the beautiful things about the ranch is we have so many springs that flow through that place. It's unbelievable the amount of water that is actually on that farm. And the beautiful thing is that we have those springs, we have the crops down in the valleys, but you know, that's what you have to look at is what is their summer pattern. So by running these cameras on the mountain too, I know for a fact that they are not near as active up there right now. But in the valley, I'm getting pictures of deer every single day, all the time. It never fails. Every day, every afternoon, they are coming in and going. Now the difference too is across the road. So the ranch is on both sides of the road, right? So I've got some mineral spots up on top of the ridge, if you will. It's not really the same altitude as the mountains across the road on the big side. I do have some cameras in place up there, and man, those bucks over there are absolutely destroying the mineral sites in one particular spot, actually. So I know for a fact that those deer are staying in that area, and one of them in particular, I named him Tank because he has to be 8 years old, man. He looks like a
Mm.
military tank. His legs look like little tiny legs. Like his body is so big It makes his legs look short. He's already got the linebacker neck. He's already got all of that stuff. So he is an absolute beast, and he is back again, and his antlers are going down. Last year they were smaller. Year before that, they were a little bit bigger. So I'm seeing the progression in him going down. So somebody needs to slip in there and get an old arrow in that old mature buck in August.
If no one buys the hunt, hey, look here. I'm not ashamed to shoot anything. I'm in like Flynn. You know that. No,
Hey.
but I would love if somebody would buy that hunt and get that going. So I would love that.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. But we have done a lot of work, man. So I would say that is your biggest thing to look at is go and figure out what their summer pattern is. Sit in a shooting house. I know it's hot. I know. Take you a fan, a cooling little thing to go on your neck or whatever, and just sit there with a set of binoculars and just watch. Figure out what they're doing. Figure out, are they coming into this field? Are they coming to that field? Use trail cameras. Throw them wise eyes out there and get them ripping. And start to pattern these deer on their summer pattern. And that way you can start noticing, okay, it's August, they're doing this. September, velvet is gone. They're hardhorn now, so now they are changing. They're segueing. And I start every year, man. I have this one spot on top of the mountain where the first week of October, there is always a shooter buck in this one particular spot. And yes, there is a tree stand there. And yes, if nobody is there, I will be in that tree stand the first week of October. I can guarantee you that.
That's right.
Because he has been there the past 3 years, every single first week of October. Now, he could be there in September too. I just don't have my cameras up. I hadn't in September, but now that I do, all the time, it's pretty solid. But even on your mountains and stuff, man, you can find pockets of where those deer are going to and from the fields and where they're bedding and things of that nature. The biggest thing to do is to find their transition zones and figure out, okay, how am I going to get to this spot? Like we've already talked about, are they feeding more in the afternoon or are they feeding more in the morning in these areas? Now, one rule that I have on the velvet season is I do not like to hunt the mornings because when you're walking to your stand before daylight, the deer are in the fields or they're going back to bed. So they will bust you every single time. Like clockwork, they're going to bust you. Just part of it. So I always suggest to go in around noon or 1, 2 o'clock and sit till dark because guess what? They're not out there. And if you want to kill a velvet buck, that's probably the best way to do it is to go in at that time frame and just ease in, don't disturb anything, and try to get an afternoon deer because 9 times out of 10, you're going to bust them walking into the stand in the mornings.
Yeah. And I typically and I've said this before, I really don't care for morning archery hunts. I've had success with them, but for the most part, I'm an evening guy, and especially in the velvet season. Now, I typically like to go in a little later. I say that it all depends on your deer. I mean, if you've sat there or you've seen on camera, like, all right, dude, the deer are in this bean field at 5:30 at the earliest, then you could slip in there at 4:50, 5 o'clock, and you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're in there at 2, and then they're in there at 4, and then they're in there at 6, it's like, okay, well, you may not want to play that game. You may just want to get in and sit down. So,
yeah,
I will say this, man, velvet season, it is hot. I mean, you have to bring plenty of water. Bring one of them towels that you can, dip of water and wring out and snap or whatever, and it's cold, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are awesome. I
Yes.
mean, any little advantage that you can do is you will need it. It is hot. Bring your thermocell or 3 of them. I
Yeah.
mean, listen, we have got a story to tell. I was filming Ben. We were going after this one particular deer that we did get on film that day, but it was
Yeah.
about 70 yards away. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh, the moral of this story is we got in this ground blind velvet season. It was 157 million degrees outside,
Whew.
and it felt dude. It felt like we were in a crock pot, just stewing up, ready
Oh
to be
yeah.
a good meal in about 4 or 5 hours. It was plumb miserable, and it smelled awful. I mean,
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know how those deer didn't just run away on us. I mean, it
Yeah.
was crazy. We had one deer come in like 10 yards from us, 8 yards. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
something stupid. And, but we were after this one deer and we ended up seeing him, and it was late and whatever. But my gosh, my point is it's hot. So be prepared for that.
Yeah, definitely be prepared for that. And I was thinking the whole time, if this wind shifts just a little bit, we are not going to be good because we smell awful. Awful. Even after spraying down
Oh,
35
it's bad.
times, we
Terrible.
still smelt like an old football sweaty locker room, man. Just, ugh. It was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, there's not enough spray on the planet to get rid of that stench. I'm just here to
No,
tell you.
sir. No, sir, there's not. In fact, when I got home, my wife was like, you can change on the porch and you can let those clothes sit on the porch before they go in my washing
Yep.
machine. And I said, yes, ma'am. And that's exactly what I did because they were absolutely drenched with sweat. But yes, keep the water, stay hydrated. If you're not staying hydrated, you're just hurting yourself more than you're helping. And it's not going to be a fun experience. I mean, man, it's hot, dude. I
It's rough out there.
I don't know, man. I don't it. I kind of have a love hate relationship with velvet season, and the reason being
Yeah,
is
I feel you.
I want to do it. I've never killed a velvet buck, so I want to kill one. But at the same time, for me personally, I'm like, well, shoot, what do? I go and sit in this blister and heat, or do I just guide and call it good? I kind of like the guiding aspect
Well,
too.
and
So
And my body type is not meant for hunting in 90-degree weather.
me neither.
It's just not.
No, all this
So,
all
but
this density that I've been working on over the years, John,
yeah.
it does not
Oh
fare well in 100 degrees.
yeah. Nah. Nah. It's meant for cold, crisp November rut
Yes,
mornings.
yes,
Yeah, exactly. But I will say we have had a lot of fun on the velvet hunt. Um, I will tell you this too. Something else to kind of consider. Let's say you're lucky enough to get a velvet buck. Um, One thing you want to think about is because it's so hot. One, you need to get to that deer rather quickly. Obviously, you want to give it time, after you shoot, but you also not give it too long. And I would bring a tarp. I wouldn't just grab those horns and start dragging. They're not hard horn, and that kind of that fur that time of year is way different than November. So if you want to get that thing mounted of any sort, then I would definitely recommend tarp. Or if you're lucky enough, drive a side by side, a tractor, a truck, golf cart, whatever you got. Just drive it up to it and plop her in there.
yeah. No, I agree with that. And one thing too, that's when you need to sit there and practice, practice, practice with your bow, and make sure that you are shooting exactly where you want to do. The repetitions always add up later when it comes to crunch time. You have that muscle memory, you have all that stuff built in that you've been practicing every single day. And when you make a good shot, you can typically uh, recover that deer pretty quick instead of waiting, an hour or whatever. Because let's be honest, like you said, time is of the essence when you shoot a deer in that kind of heat. So you need to get it back, get it cleaned, get that meat
Mm-hmm.
and the antlers antlers specifically, you need to get those antlers in the freezer immediately, as soon as possible. You need to get it there, get it caped, and take that cape and those antlers straight to a freezer and get those
Put it in
babies
a bag.
frozen. Yes, because otherwise that velvet is going to start slipping and it's going to fall off. It's going to smell awful. It's going to be rot, rank, nasty junk. And you can have them artificially put it on there, sure, but if I do it, I want to have, exactly, what the velvet was on the antlers. I want it to be what it was. So,
Yeah.
I think that's definitely something to think about there is, the time from the shot to the freezer and get it as quick as possible. Take your pictures, do your thing, but get that thing on ice and in a cooler, freezer, whatever, as fast as possible. And, that goes, what we were just talking about,
sure.
You said something earlier that just brought my mind to another thought. When you're talking about, how bad we stunk and the wind and all that stuff. So HuntWise actually has this thing called Windcast. So it'll tell you, when you go to set up a stand, you can determine which way is the best wind for that specific stand. So if you know the deer are coming from this way, that way, whatever, well, then you can set the wind for that stand accordingly. And when you pull up your HuntWise app, you can go over to that stand and it'll say, it'll show you which wind is the best. So that way, every time you go to a stand that the wind is perfect for what you're trying to hunt.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. I mean, it's kind of incredible what all that this technology can do, and that app in particular. Obviously, I mean that man, it's just nuts knowing how we grew up, and then now it's like, oh, just open up the HuntWise app, and it just tells you all the info that you'll ever need. Obviously, it's not this first shot, way to kind of make sure you kill something, but right. it sure don't hurt. That's for certain. Mm-mm. I mean, I'm just here to tell you, man, that old HuntWise app comes in handy for sure, especially on the whole wind thing. I mean, it comes in handy.
Yeah, man, it does. So let's segue into talking about early archery there. So we've talked about how we plan for velvet season. We've talked about, what they're doing, their summer patterns and all that. Let's talk about early bow season, the end of September to the first week of October.
Yep.
What have you seen, John, over the past few years on different patterns and things like that where you are?
Yeah. So for me, like I mentioned earlier, it's evenings, but now those deer, just like you were saying, are out of their summer pattern. So for the velvet hunt, you can pretty well, it's a little quote unquote easier to pattern a buck, where now a little more difficult. And a lot of people talk about the October lull. That's a big thing in this deer hunting world, and a lot of people seem to think it's just impossible to shoot an archery buck, during the month of October and that into September. It's very possible. You may not have as many opportunities, say, as the rut, but possible nonetheless. So my strategy for regular bow season, at least, and whenever I say regular bow season, in Tennessee, we have the velvet hunt, which is a 3-day hunt in August. Then we have bow season, opens at the end of September, runs all the way through a little bit into November. And then in the middle of November, there's a 2-week muzzleloader. And then after that, so like the end of November, probably around 27th, 28th, 9th, 30th, somewhere in there, all through December. And the first weekend of January is rifle season. So when I say bow season, this is what I'm talking about, that beginning part of the year. What I've noticed is if you can do two things, if you can hunt the evenings, right, and hunt green. So stuff, corn, clover, soybeans. If you have green fields and in the evening, seems to be better for me early on. And another thing to add on to that is I like to pick and choose, especially early. You know, if you can't get in this spot the right way because of the wind, or if if you get a notification on your wise eye, right, and that deer's in there a little early, or oh man, the deer changed because of this or that, or something happens, then maybe you don't hunt every single day in this one spot. I definitely would try not to overhunt anything, especially if it's the wrong scenario for you, wrong wind or whatever have you. But so for me, it's hunt when it's right, and I like to hunt evenings and hunt green, and that's been the biggest factor for me. Um, Obviously, if you have a food plot like soybeans or cowpeas or something that they want to eat early, some sort of green leaf, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, man. No, that's really good points you made right there. And the only thing I'm going to add to it is, that first week of October is when those big boys start showing up on top of the mountain again. Last year they were starting to put in scrapes and rubs already. I actually have uh, footage from the wise eye that shows deer fighting in the first week of October. I mean, they're younger bucks, but still, they're still. It just blows my mind that they're already getting ready for the fight of their life. It just is like, holy smokes, man! Like, what are these dudes doing right now? I mean, is this really what you're trying to accomplish? Is just to fight everybody right now? I mean, but it is that's what they're trying to do. And man, the good thing too is where I'm at up here in Middle Tennessee, we have a lot of oak trees on that farm. So a lot of the stuff is actually pretty solid because of the oak trees, and they're usually dropping acorns by then. And, that's also another very solid food source for the whitetail to put on fat, have protein to survive the winter, to survive the rut, and all those kind of things. So basically, all we're doing is supplementing what God has already given them. We're just trying to help a little bit, give back and help them grow their fullest potential. But, I have noticed though that the biggest difference for me is early season August versus first of regular archery season. They have made a total shift. When they get hardhorn, they shift, man. They start not only becoming more difficult to pattern, but they still come down to the fields. They still do, but they start frequenting the mountaintops more. They're a lot more regular up there than they are right now. So, they're not hitting the minerals like they were and things like that,
Well, yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to say there's no point for them not to hit the minerals, but their body knows whenever there's something growing out of their face, right? That's like, and they're like, man, something's happening. I need some protein and minerals and, fats and salt, all those things.
Yeah.
And versus whenever they're hardhorn, they're kind of like, oh, well, I mean, minerals are good and all, but like, I'd rather eat some acorns or, maybe some turnip leaves or, clover or a bushel of corn or something. Like, they would kind of go that route. I will say this: if you don't have a green field, don't have access to one, whatever, can't plant a food plot, all those things. I've been there. I will say acorn flats. That to me, I've always had success. If you have an acorn flat and then a big ridge right next to it that runs into some sort of finger or saddle point, whatever, dude, if you can get in there and you can see and you're kind of in this nice, zone that's got like 20 to 40 yards of kind of straight shots here and there, and it's just a flat, they come off the ridge or they're going to the ridge and they're kind of eating on the flat. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. it's
Oh,
over.
buddy, it is over. So, one other thing I'll give as a good starting point to look for that in that transition is look for an area if you have pine plantations or whatever, where the pines and the hardwoods meet. I'm telling you right now, that is a deadly spot because those big bucks love to bed in the pines because they're so thick. And then they come out and feed into the oak flats. And I'm telling you, man, that I have killed a lot of deer in that exact situation. And it's just phenomenal to sit back and watch that happen. So that's one thing that I would strongly recommend is finding that balance, even if it's just some thick brush. Doesn't have to necessarily be pines, just something that's thick that goes to open hardwoods. That's the line that a lot of these deer are going to take because they feel safe. And
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I have a strong love for those kind of areas. I always have, man. I've always had great success in those fields, in those areas, and it's been very fruitful over the years. So, you know, basically the points to take away from this early season, they're on their summer patterns. Get your cameras out, figure out where they're going, what they're doing, how they're entering and exiting the field, and be ready to segue once they go to hardhorn because you've got to think hardhorn changes everything. And they can go hardhorn real quick. All it takes is one little cold snap or a storm or whatever, and they'll go rub that velvet off and be hardhorn ready to change, and you'll start seeing bucks in different areas. So, for me, not having not many deer on top of the mountain right now, that's okay because I know that in a couple months, it's going to change. And I already have cameras in place that are ready to go, but I'm also adding clover food plots to the top of the mountains, which will also give them what they need throughout those winter months, and they'll stay. Hopefully, obviously a buck chasing a doe is going to go wherever it wants to go anyway, but hopefully they'll stay closer and utilize those plots to survive the winter and things like that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. It all starts with just doing your scouting, having a plan, get in there, and also, I mean, I can't stress this enough. Y'all need to be shooting your bows like
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah,
Shoot,
shoot. Yep.
shoot, 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 shoot. Practice, man. Listen, even if let's say you have 6 arrows, 4 arrows, whatever, dude, shoot two or 3 rounds. And what I mean by that is, if you have 6 arrows, okay, shoot a round of 6, and then shoot another round, and even if that's all you do, hey, it's something. You need to just shoot. Start close, and then just get a little further. Make sure you're tuned up. Make sure you're sighted in, and then just make sure it's just consistency. Because to me, and this, and I'll end it with this, Ben. To me, if you are thinking too much when you pull that bow back on an animal, it's already over. It was over before it even started. Your muscle just needs to know, oh, I anchor here, I hold like this, I have a little bend, my grip's like this, maybe you have one of those kisser buttons, whatever it is, to where it's just bang, bang, bang. You don't even have to think about it. You just draw back and bloop, we're there, and we're anchored. Aim small, miss small, and then all that. So just practice, 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 practice.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna help you.
No, I agree with that 100%. So, with that, John, I think you covered everything pretty well. Guys, thank you again for listening to this episode of Rooted Podcast. Don't forget, check us out at rootedtelevision.com. We have all of our merch available for the podcast and for the TV show. You can click the shop button, and there's everything from hats, shirts, hoodies, the whole works. And also, we are on all social media platforms. So please go on, give us a follow, tell your friends about us, and we really, really do appreciate y'all listening to what we have going on.
Yep, absolutely. And I've got one last little thing to add there. July 12th, 13th, and 14th, BC and I will be in Alabama. Funny enough, it's called the Tennessee Valley Hunting and Fishing Show, but we will be in Alabama on those dates at that show, at that convention. So please, if you are in that area, come by, say hello. We'll be happy to chat it up with y'all. And
Yeah.
we got some exciting giveaways coming. If you're coming to that show, we got some things in the works that are happening. So we're gonna be giving away some stuff. We got a lot of cool things happening. So if you're in that area, I think it's in Gunnersville. Where is it?
Huntsville, Alabama.
That's not right.
Huntsville, Alabama, y'all. Come see
Well,
us.
there you go.
My home state. Y'all come and see us and
Yeah.
talk to us. And one last thing, if you want to support this podcast, you can do so at the link in the description. We appreciate everybody. And with that, the Redneck is out.
See y'all.
For all things Rooted Podcast and Rooted Television, and I mean hats, shirts, hoodies, and other merch, check out our friends at CH Lone Star Pro and the link that is in our description.